Hi, thank you for coming to my channel, American Teacher 5th grade. This little bit is called Yankee Doodle. It's just a fife and drum by Victor B. McCarthy, if you would like to subscribe to him. It's pretty cool. What we're hearing again is Yankee Doodle because we are studying the American Revolution, which is classic to 5th grade studies. So I'm super excited about this section. Our big idea is freedom. Freedom was so important to the colonists that they were willing to suffer the terrible hardships and years of war to win it. They obviously didn't feel like they had it, and they felt like whatever hardships they had, it certainly beat the hardships. It was more of a hardship for a reason than just a reason that they chose versus a reason that was just imposed upon them by the British. What to know during this part that we want to learn about is what disagreements led to the American Revolution and which people and groups impacted the American Revolution, and what were the major events and battles of the American Revolution, and how did the American Revolution affect United States history. I mean, basically, we are here today because of the American Revolution. So I'm super grateful to those who did make those sacrifices to us, and I'm just especially excited to share this part. So here's kind of our opening one. I'm going to move it so that you can see the timeline down below. We are now Unit 4, so we are almost like, or actually it looks like we're over halfway through because of all the other parts that are in it. I want to move it up so that you can see the timeline. Obviously, you know, a revolution, sometimes we talk about a revolution as like a music revolution or something, but it just certainly changed things. And we can also talk about, like, you know, a scientific vocabulary term would be, you know, like a revolution of the earth, you know, as it orbits around the sun. A revolution would be it spinning on its axis. This, you know, because we change from night to day, and that's pretty drastic. This is pretty drastic. So we're starting in the 1760s. Notice that it's every 10 years in our sequential timeline. It's ending on 1790, which is kind of like right behind me on my picture. But let's go ahead and quick share. The first thing to notice is down here, what was kind of going on in the world at the same time is in 1762, Catherine the Great becomes ruler of Russia. And so I know England had like Queen Victoria, but she really doesn't show up until like the 1800s. And so it is a big deal for a woman leader. So I do want to recognize her, whether or not you thought she was a good leader or not. That's really your opinion once you study all of the facts, but I'm just like, kudos to the females. All right. Then next we have in 1765 that pertains to the American Revolution is the Stamp Act is passed. Now, if I were doing this in my classroom, I kind of created, and I probably should have done something like that, but here, let's see, where can you guys go? So I would like take a bunch of pieces of paper and I would fill them and kind of like things like that. So then you could write like that. And it's kind of a more fun project, funner. Anyways, it's a little bit more engaging than just always reading about it, or it gives you a better purpose for reading. What were the causes that led to the American Revolution? And you can do 5 or 7 of them. 7's of them are more complete depending on what you want to do. But so the first cause would be the Stamp Act is passed. I would put that down. And then let's see, what else do we have? So shortly after that, 4 years after that, down below in other parts of the world, In 1769, English inventor James Watt builds a steam engine. And that's huge because that totally changes navies and how fast we can get export and import goods to our countries. So that was huge. And like we can get past the doldrums in the Pacific Ocean, and it was a big deal. So here we go. And then in 1770 in the Americas, the Boston Massacre takes place. So again, that would be another cause that I would put on this. So like the first part, I would have like the title, 7 Causes of the American Revolution. Then down here, I would have, the Stamp Act. And then down here, I would have, the Boston Massacre. And I would keep going, just keep adding papers and folding them. Give them, I don't know, ½ inch, 3/4 of an inch, figure out in centimeters if you want to, maybe 3 to 4 centimeters apart, so that you can fit as many causes that you can. Then the Boston Massacre, and then and I would have them include the dates, not that we have to remember that, but everybody should all the time know the date of 1776. We're going to get to that, but I just can't wait to say it. So let's see, about that same time in the same year, James Cook explores Australia. So that was huge for England, and you might say devastating for the indigenous people, the Aborigines of Australia, but that was going on. 1773, so maybe England was like, fine, whatever, with the colonies. We now have Australia. So that was kind of going on. In 1773, the Boston Tea Party takes place. I can't wait to read about that. That's going to be exciting. In 1776, yay, the Declaration of Independence is approved. And maybe later on we'll be reading through that declaration. In 1781, the British surrendered to the Americans at Yorktown. So I want you to notice that's a number of years have gone by, 5 years at least. Interestingly enough, like the Civil War, they say was across 5 Aprils, so a little over 5 years as well, depending on when you start. And so that's a long time for hardship, Would we today be willing to take on 5 years of hardship for freedoms? Also in 1783, the Treaty of Paris is signed. Before that, a little bit after the British surrender, Britain takes control of lands in India. So they're like, poor India. But the British are like, well, we lost the American colonies, so they're still looking for land. And then behind me, if you can kind of see this, in 1789, and interestingly enough, that's when we disbanded the Articles of Confederation and started our own constitution. Right at the same time, the French Revolution begins. Ours was bloody. Theirs was, I don't know, worse. I don't know. Certainly the guillotine. I'm not going to go into graphics about that. If you're a parent, feel free to look that up. That's a terrible way. I don't know to go about it. So that was part of the French Revolution. Certainly this, and that included, I felt like, more citizens, but here we go. So between the American colonies, I'm going to go ahead and leave it down low so you can see all of these, and then I'll go up to the former ones. Again, notice the color, that this kind of represents their lifespan. And so you can see like who was contemporaries with who. So during around 1775, almost all of these were alive except for Crispus Attucks. And we'll learn about him in just a moment. So but these are all contemporaries. Well, so 1770, they are all contemporaries, meaning that they were all alive at the same time. So even though some may have been younger and some may have been older, sort of like you and your grandparents, but certainly people of your same generation, those are your contemporaries, even if you're like, I don't know who that person is, but you're alive at the same time. So technically, we're all kind of experiencing the same global events. So I'm going to go ahead and start down here. This is, let's see if I can hopefully pronounce his name correctly. I'm going to say Theandangia. He lived from about 1742 to 1807. He's a Mohawk leader who later took the name Joseph Brant. And he helped the British during the American Revolution. And that's what we're going to see again, is that the Native American tribes, which were not getting along with each other before the Europeans came along, then they certainly they got divided again between like the colonists and the English. And so we'll be reading to find out why he chose to help the British instead of the colonists. Thomas Jefferson, this is somebody you need to know, okay? I feel like everybody in the world, no matter where you need to know, you need to know about Thomas Jefferson. He's a name brand. So if you get nothing out of all of my videos, I hope you learn a little bit more about Thomas Jefferson, or at least understand why he's so important and as a historical figure. And he lived from 1743 to 1826. He was the chief writer of the Declaration of Independence. There was a committee of 5, but they're like, you know how it is with most school projects. Anytime you do that, there's usually 1 or 2 people who do all the work, and then the rest kind of hang on the coattails. But he really was a great writer, and so there were 5 on the committee. 3, Benjamin Franklin and John Adams were kind of and Thomas Jefferson were the top 3 in it. And basically Franklin and Jefferson and Adams said, you guys, you're better liked, you're the best writer. We're just going to let you do it, and then we'll add some edits at the end. And that's pretty much what they did. So that's why he gets the title of chief writer. And he also served as the 3rd president of the United States. Second was John Adams, who was also on that same Declaration of Independence. And these 2 individuals, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, they went from being the best of friends to the worst of enemies. And so I don't know if this will tell us more about it. I certainly encourage you to research more about both of those individuals. They are amazing people. Another contemporary at the time is Bernardo de Galvez, and he lived from 1746, so notice 1740s is about when all they were born, to 1786. Governor of Spanish Louisiana, and he helped the Americans during the Revolutionary War. So he helped the colonists. I don't know if he's like, yeah, it'll be easier to take them over once the English are out of the way. But he certainly didn't like the idea of the English taking over Louisiana. He's like, I don't want to give this up. And so he kind of thought politically this is the better bet. And the colonists really didn't have a navy, and the Spanish had an amazing navy. So he was certainly helpful that way. And if you're Spanish or you just love history, I also encourage you to research this person. That's amazing. All right, one of the females during this time is Mary Ludwig Hayes McCauley. And she's about 10 years younger than most of them. And she was born around 1754. We're not quite sure. We do know when she died in 1832. And she earned the nickname Molly Pitcher by carrying water to troops during the Battle of Monmouth. And so she also, after that happened, and I believe she had a husband at the time, And that was why she joined the military to be there with her husband, to hang out with him, and to, you know, help him clean his clothes, wash, make certain he had good meals, make certain the others also had good meals. And so, yeah, you know, you get worn out fighting, and she was willing to brave bullets to take water to those who were firing. Anyways, we'll learn more about her. She fired cannons during the battle after her husband was wounded. So it's a big deal. What she's holding right here is kind of what you would use to pack the cannon with. Like, they would put the cannonball in, and then they would add like the gunpowder and other stuff. And then this thing was, you know, you put it all in there. So let's go ahead and look at these. They're a little bit older. Crispus Attucks, we're not quite sure. We think maybe that he was born around 1725. We definitely know when he died in 1770. He was killed by British soldiers at the Boston Massacre, and he is often called the first person to be killed in the struggle for American freedom. And he was also a man of color, black, brown. There we go. So I do believe he was a free man, even he wasn't a slave, and he certainly is portrayed as a free person here and how he's dressed. Let's see. Another important person is Mercy Otis Warren. She was born in 1728 and lived till 1814. She was a Massachusetts patriot who wrote plays to protest British rule. Propaganda. So, yeah, the power of the word. They say the pen is mightier than the sword, and that proves it. You know, poetry, plays, those sorts of things. Anything to protest British rule and promote them ruling themselves. She also wrote a history of the American Revolution. I haven't read her words yet, but that would be a great way to start, is listening to what she had to say. That would definitely be a primary source. George Washington, another name that should be known by everyone around the world. And 1732 to 1799. He led the Americans to victory in the American Revolution. He served as the first president of the United States. And it is kind of miraculous. You know, he first fought, and we'll learn about this as we read along, but he first fought for the British. And the Native Americans would often say, yeah, we were aiming for all of these soldiers. He was a leader in the British military. And if he learned anything from fighting the Native Americans with the British, is that the British could be beat. And he kind of learned the Native American style warfare. So, yeah, I'm not going to say that they fought dirty. I'm just going to say they fought smart. And so we learned from them. And he was, many people say he was protected by divine providence, which is, you know, not to get too political in today's world, but it is 2024, and it's still the month of July. And just a few weeks ago, another former president, they believe, was saved from an assassination attempt by what is considered to be divine providence. And so definitely, you know, I want to focus on American history, but we're so glad that that George Washington lived to make the changes, to be our founding father, and certainly life for us, who knows if it would even be the same if George Washington had been taken out, as so many tried to do. Patrick Henry. I found out that some of my ancestors lived in the same neighborhood as him. That's kind of cool to think about. I don't think I'm a descendant of his, but It's kind of odd, like from the same colony anyways. Patrick Henry, from 1736 to 1799, a member of the Virginia House of Burgesses, and spoke out against British rule and taxes. And we'll find out what his famous quotes were. Here's a map of the place, colonial America. So again, these are the 13 English colonies that we have over here. So I know the Spanish kind of claimed Florida, but as you can see, it's not there because the Seminole did a good job. But we do have St. Augustine, that is the oldest European city in the United States of America today. And so, but the Seminole are like, they did a good job defending their land for a long time. Most of this land right through here, this was New Spain. So the light orange is New Spain. Like if you see it in red, that's the name of a Native American tribe, so definitely the Seminole down here. We've seen a few of these, Navajo, Hopi, Apache. These are in the New Mexico area, southwest. We also have Pavia, or the Plima, Comanche. Oh yeah, Utes. No. Maybe you can figure out that Utah was named after the Utes. And then this area, still at least in 1775, was still mostly claimed by these tribes all throughout here, and many of the eastern tribes were being pushed out towards further west. So right here in, it looks like Pennsylvania, we have the Old North Church in Boston. No, that would be Massachusetts. And Pennsylvania State House in Philadelphia. Down here we have the Virginia Capitol in Williamsburg. At the same time, Fort San Carlos near St. Louis is up here. So that sounds Spanish. Okay, although that does say New Orleans, and maybe they were around. Remember, the French really didn't have a lot of colonies because French people were like, no, we're going to stay here. And so it was just the French mountain men, and they would usually kind of, like they would trade back to France for money and to be wealthy. But for the most part, they didn't set up cities or colonies. They just merged with the local tribes, and that's why the local tribes like the French. All right, reading social studies, cause and effect. So again, cause and effect. So that little package that I would do that. Here we go. Because this happened, the effect was this. Because of that, the effect was this. Because of that. So we can have a chain reaction. And I'd also like to play like a country western song called Third Rock from the Sun. It has nothing to do with the American Revolution, but for cause and effect, it's kind of a fun one to listen to if you're going to focus on that skill. So let's go ahead and work on that. Why does cause and effect matter? Understanding cause and effect can help you see why events happen. Sometimes we're just like, why? And you're like, well, actually there are lots of causes as to why. So let's learn. A cause is an action or event that makes something else happen. An effect is what happens as the result of that action or event. So because this happened, the effect is this. Sometimes we say that. So I had a good day. What made my day good? Well, because I got to learn about the American Revolution. So what caused my day to be good? Learning about the American Revolution. All right. Words and phrases such as because, since, so, for these reasons, and as a result are clues to cause and effect. So anytime you see those, you know that your text feature will be cause and effect. Sometimes the effect may be stated before the cause. So that would happen. Again, like I said, I had a good day. Effect. Why? because I had a good day because I got to learn about this. Practice. Or maybe you're like, I had a great day because I didn't have to go to school, or I got to go to the movies, or I got to hang out with my family. Okay? Practice. Read the paragraphs that follow, then find causes and effects in the second paragraph. So we're going to focus on this paragraph right here. Notice every indentation. It's one paragraph. That's the second paragraph. But let's focus on this one down here. All right. In the mid-1600s, people began to leave the Massachusetts Bay Colony and start their own settlements. Some left because of religious reasons. Others left to find better economic opportunities. By the mid-1700s, colonists no longer had to buy goods from Europe to live. They had their own cities and businesses. Also, more colonists had been born in the colonies. It was the only home they knew. I'm going to scooch this up a little bit. For these reasons, that's our clue word, the colonists began to depend less on England. They're like, okay, we don't need you anymore. We've got people to make pots and pans. Before, they didn't have pots and pans in the colonies, and so they were dependent on whatever the boats brought over. So, find causes and effects. So, because the effect was the colonists began to depend less on England because they had their own cities and businesses. They were born in the colonies. They like, I've never lived in London. I've never lived in England. So why should I listen to them? Okay, read the paragraphs and answer the questions from strangers to neighbors. Let's go ahead and read our questions first. Our first question is, what caused John Rutledge to travel to New York City? Our second question is, why were the colonies like different countries? Our third question is, how did learning about the Iroquois League affect colonists? Okay. By 1765, John Rutledge traveled from his home in South Carolina to New York. He called it his first trip to a foreign country. That says a lot about how the colonists viewed one another. So again, what caused John Rutledge? Oh, I don't know yet. Okay. The colonies had been founded at different times and for different reasons. Each had its own mix of people, each had its own economy and its own government. As a result, there's one of our clue words, the colonies really were like different countries. Things were about to change, though. John Rutledge was going to New York City to meet with representatives from 10 of the colonies. They were to discuss a new tax law. The colonists thought that the tax was unfair. They wanted to figure out what to do about it. While in New York, Rutledge met with Sir William Johnson. Johnson was a wealthy English merchant who was friendly with the Iroquois. Johnson told Rutledge about how members of the Iroquois League worked together to solve problems. And if we remember, the Iroquois League were about 5 different tribes, or maybe they were all Iroquois, but kind of maybe perhaps different clans within the Iroquois. Rutledge told other colonists about the Iroquois League. Like the Iroquois, the colonists soon began to work together. They started seeing each other not as foreigners, but as neighbors. So again, let's go back. What caused John Rutledge to travel to New York City? Well, if I were to start this off, according to the text in paragraph 3, Rutledge was going to New York City to meet with representatives from 10 of the colonies. So there's 13 and at least 10 decided to get together. All right, why were the colonies like different countries? Well, according to the text in paragraph 1 to, in paragraph 2, colonies had been founded at different times and for different reasons. Each had its own mix of people. Okay? They had their own economy and government. So lots of causes. There's 3 different causes for that answer. If you give me any one of them, I'd accept it. All right, number 3. How did learning about the Iroquois League affect the colonists? So, again, according to the text in paragraph 4 and 5, learning about the Iroquois League helped the colonists work together to start seeing each other as neighbors instead of foreigners. Okay? They're like, we don't need to fight against each other. And again, that's kind of what was going on back during like in Greek times. You know, there were basically city-states that were like, if you can think about it, like giant high schools, if you will, and they would go to war with each other. Today, unfortunately, we don't go to war. We just kind of have friendly rivalries between towns or areas that like support football teams, whether it's high school, college, or professional. All right, this is one of my most favorite poems, and so we're going to start off Unit 4 with Paul Revere's Ride and the Landlord's Tale. And again, there were other people who were key during this, but they didn't have a poem made out for them. So I'll go ahead and leave it here so you can take a picture, and I'll move it again when I get over to the next page. Okay. This is by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. That's a poet who has certainly, his name has lasted more than a century, so he's worth remembering. And this is illustrated by Charles Santor. It's a pretty cool picture. So notice the hands are really close up to the 12, so it's near midnight. It's dark versus, noontime, 12 noon. So this is just not the poem. This is an introduction to the poem. It says, on the night of April 18th, 1775, British troops left Boston. They were on their way to the nearby towns of Lexington and Concord. There, they were to arrest colonial leaders Samuel Adams and John Hancock. And I believe Samuel Adams was a cousin to John Adams. Okay, and Samuel Adams, pretty poor. John Hancock, extremely rich. And he lost most of his money during the American Revolution. But before it, he was instrumental and put his money where his mouth is, as the expression says. When the colonists heard of the plan, they sent several men to warn the townspeople. One of those men was Paul Revere, a Boston silversmith. He rode across the countryside, risking his life to deliver the news. Almost 100 years after the ride, a poet, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, wrote a poem to honor Revere's brave deed. So I'll move this over here. Pardon. Here, if you want to take a picture. And I want you to listen to the rhyme and the rhythm while I do this. We're not going to talk about poetry in this one, but to kind of hear it, not all poems need to rhyme, but it kind of helps you memorize them if they do. And again, this is one of the best. Here you go. If you can memorize it, wow, that would be phenomenal. Here you go. You would really impress your friends if you can memorize it. Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere on the 18th of April in 75. Hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year. He said to his friend, if the British march by land or sea from the town tonight, hang a lantern aloft in the belfry arch of the North Church Tower as a signal light. 1 if by land, and 2 if by sea, and I on the opposite shore will be, ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm, for the country folk to be fed up and to for the country folk to be up and to arm. I'm going to read that last two lines a little bit. Sorry about that. Through every Middlesex village and farm, for the country folk to be up and to arm. And lo, as he looks on the belfry's height, a glimmer and then a gleam of light. He springs to the saddle, to the bridle he turns, but lingers and gazes till full on his sight a second lamp and the belfry burns. And if we see right down here, belfry means a bell tower. So in the church bell tower, the Old North church bell tower. I'm gonna put this here. I should probably pause it for you, but I don't know. I just feel like this is how it is. Okay, go ahead and take a picture. A hurry of hoofs in a village street, a shape in the moonlight, a bulk in the dark, and beneath from the pebbles in passing a spark, struck out by a steed flying fearless and fleet. That was all, and yet through the gloom and the light, the fate of a nation was riding that night, and the spark struck out by the steed in his flight, kindled the land into flame with its heat. You know the rest. In the books you have read, how the British regulars fired and fled, how the farmers gave them ball for ball from behind each fence and farmyard wall, chasing the redcoats down the lane, then crossing the fields to emerge again, under the trees at the turn of the road, and only pausing to fire and load. So through the night rode Paul Revere, and so through the night went his cry of alarm to every Middlesex village and farm, a cry of defiance and not of fear, a voice in the darkness, a knock at the door, and a word that shall echo for evermore, forborne on the night wind of the past, through all of our history to the last. In the hour of darkness, in peril and need, the people will waken and listen to hear the hurrying hoofbeats of that steed and the midnight message of Paul Revere. Isn't that just inspiring? I just love reading it. It's just there. Down here in the response corner. So for those of you who do know a little bit of your history, that was when the shot that was heard around the world. One of my favorite videos to show in the classroom regarding that would be a Schoolhouse Rock one. And so there's one on the U.S. Constitution, the preamble, and it tells also a little bit about like why they came, but the shot heard around the world that sparked an American Revolution. I encourage you to find that on YouTube and share that. Those are some of my favorites. In the response corner, our focus skill, again, cause and effect. What signal caused Paul Revere to begin his ride? Do you remember? Now, dealing with poetry, we don't call them paragraphs, we call them stanzas. So, can you remember? So this would be stanza 1, and in stanza 2, and it says 1 if by land and 2 if by sea. So then we could also say lines. We could start our lines here, or we can start our lines here and number each one individually. But I would like to say second stanza, line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can say it there, or if you could also say in third stanza, a second lamp in the belfry burns. Also line 1, 2, 3, 4, line 5 in the third stanza. So that would answer that question. Make it relevant. Think about how people today receive news. Why is it important for people to know about current events? So, you know, what's going on right now is like right now there's Congress is interviewing the Secret Service to understand why a would-be assassin would had access to that. And so the American people can hear, or anybody around the world who wants to, we as it's being performed, as it's being conducted, we're finding out about this in real time, you know. Whereas all of my videos, I don't put any of them out live, not currently. If I ever do, that will be a thing. But for right now, I'm just kind of recording these and then I'm putting them up so that you can get to them whenever you want. And this is also being recorded. But so back then they didn't have the internet, they didn't have, you know, all they had really to be fast, they didn't have cars, they didn't have rockets, they didn't have planes or even trains. All they had were fast horses. And so people willing to ride the horses in the middle of the night, and there were a few of them because they weren't quite sure which way they were going to go. And, you know, Paul Revere was really a backup plan. And I don't even know if he got there. He kind of got waylaid a little bit, but Paul Revere, and you will hear, those words rhyme. And so that's why it went with his name and not the person. And I feel terrible. I should know it. But I'm the one who actually got through. He was really good. He was a really good actor. You know, pretend to be drunk and got through the lines. And then went and warned everybody. So Paul Revere did get waylaid, but it was good. The people, as the British came coming, people weren't quite ready for them, but when they were returning, they were ready for them. And it was kind of, there weren't too many battles that were won initially by the colonists, but that was one of them. Although certainly people did die, but the two people, Samuel Adams and John Hancock, they did get to safety and were able to leave. So next video will be chapter 8, The Colonies Unite. So we have 13 lucky colonies. Sometimes 13 is considered an unlucky number, but I'm going to say it was very lucky. They unite, and we'll be reading about that. Let's go ahead and focus on our study skills. So again, graphic organizers can help you connect. So we kind of saw like a cause and effect graphic organizer. This one is what I would call main idea and details, but it's still also kind of a different bubble one for early this. So it's called a concept map. The main idea is written in the center bubble. Events leading to the American Revolution over here. Kind of a subheading would be reactions to taxes, such as the Stamp Act, early conflicts like the Boston Tea Party, Boston Massacre, those sorts of things. Preview vocabulary, and let's see if I can do that. So boycott, that's a word that we still use today, and it sometimes can be very, very effective. Blockade and commander-in-chief. So a boycott, it's been used for hundreds of years. And let's see, it's kind of like when you refuse to purchase a service. Sometimes it works, sometimes people are like, nope, you have to really get everybody on board to make a boycott work. A blockade, that's when they're blocking ships from like bringing things in. So we kind of, I won't say it was a blockade, but we did have like a supply chain shortage recently, and sometimes those things happen on purpose, but something was blocked. They'll say it was an accident. That's true. Commander-in-Chief, and Commander-in-Chief is one of the titles of our president. Even today, but even before then, the Commander-in-Chief is a military term. So today the president is the lead one, but in the military, usually you're like, okay, 4 or 5 star generals, those are the ones who are the Commander-in-Chief, but they still need to answer to the president. All right, thanks so much for joining me. I'm going to end again with the Yankee Doodle while I turn this off.